LGBT community.
LGB and me.
Hi, welcome to Green Tea. My name is Rose, and this is Francesca.
Hello.
And this is Sammy.
Hi.
So this is actually our second podcast. You can go listen to our first one on our YouTube channel. The first one's topic was mental illness and its effect on relationships. Today our topic is going to be issues within the LGBT community. Because I feel like, well, not to expose us too quickly, but we are all part of the LGBT community within the three of us here, so I feel like we are the right people to talk about the issues within it. So the first topic that we're gonna speak about is gatekeeping, and that whole concept that, like, you have to be exactly a certain way to be in the LGBT community. Like, if you're bisexual, but your preference is men, no, you're straight. Sorry. You don't get to go to our parties. Pride, not allowed.
Yeah.
There's actually a force field around Pride, and if you're just not gay enough, you can't get through.
Yeah, it's like a spell. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, trans people. I know you're part of the LGBT community, but if you're a straight trans person, you're just, you kept out. You bounce off.
I feel like gatekeeping is definitely an ugly part of our community, and I feel like it's very clear to see that. But at the same time, I think it's very clear as well to see why it originates. I think it comes from a deep-seated insecurity and the need to protect what we have. I mean, we see it every year at Pride, all the tweets that are like, can straight people go to Pride? And I mean, regardless of how you feel about that, there is definitely a wave of people. I'm not going to say that they're trying to encroach upon the LGBT community and what we have, Pride essentially, but definitely there are more people trying to find a group and trying to be in the LGBT community. We have things that are newer by all senses, like asexuality, demisexuality.
Yeah. And I mean, I think people also have that thing where they're like, oh my god, I have my gay friend. And it's like, I mean, okay, but like...
I'm also, I have other things.
They should be more to you than just like a gay friend.
Yeah. The only thing that you do is like hang out and like watch him like fuck dudes, and that's why he's your gay friend.
They give you fashion advice.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know anything about him actually, but he's I know he's gay.
I know
that's
he's
all that
gay.
matters.
No idea where he actually lives. We just hang out at my house all the time.
I think he might live in my house, actually. I'm a little concerned. I think
he
sleeps in the closet.
Here.
Well, I mean, it is, like, understandable. There's been so much violence against the LGBT community, like, historically, that when you feel like there are people who are trying to join to be fashionable or trying to join for maybe reasons that you don't think are pure, I can understand why you'd be protected.
I think that people think that, the community is a safe space, and LGBT people want to protect that and kind of keep it exclusive to a certain sense, because we feel like if you don't need that safe space, then you shouldn't go in there. Because, like, if you haven't ever been discriminated because of, like, your identity or something like that, and I'm not saying, like, if you're just a gay person in an accepting family, I'm not talking about that, because there are people out there who are homophobic. I'm talking about, like, things where it's like, I'm not really sure if someone's discriminating against that, like allies. Like, someone might be like, I disagree with you, but it's an opinion that you can keep to yourself. It's not like a, like, it's not your life, it's not you, it's not your life. I feel like the LGBT community is just trying to, like, keep their safe space truly, like, safe of people who need it. And I feel like the whole, like, straight people going to Pride, I feel like they see that, like, sense of community and stuff. But the LGBT community isn't really a place for, like, all outcasts, if that makes sense. And I know that that's a weird thing to say, because, like, gay people have been, like, outcast by society, and that's why we created this thing. But it's not like a send all of your, like, lost puppies and stuff. Like, we're nice people. We might, like, come for you. It's not like we're gonna be bad people and be like, if you're not gay, then I don't care if you've ever suffered in your life. But, like, it's also, you shouldn't try and, like, force your way into this community that isn't necessarily, like, where you belong, just because you're looking for some place to call your own.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying that there's, like, an initiation or anything. Like, you have to have been, like, discriminated against to be a part of it, but like so many people in the LGBT community are like discriminated against, and that's why there's a sense of community, because we all have like this one similar aspect of our lives where it's like Yeah, like, yeah, you sometimes people don't like you, but, like, people call me fag on the street sometimes.
I can't walk in public and hold hands. We're too afraid.
It's just kind of
quirky.
So, I mean, I think when straight people try to, like, come into the LGBT community, it's just kind of, like, putting themselves in a place where they can't necessarily relate to the other people there. Mm-hmm. And I think that also goes along with the whole thing where it's, like, a lot of people are, like, the being bisexual for fashion kind of thing, where it's like there's so many women now who are like, yeah, I mean, she's really hot, like Ruby Rose. They're sexy.
And it's like, I don't know. And I will say the straight couples at Pride thing is like a particular, like, when straight people go to Pride, of course I'm not being like, screw you and stuff. And I wouldn't, like, don't go around Pride seeing straight presenting couples and be like, you don't belong here. Because one of them might be like trans or non-binary, so they do belong there. And second of all, they might like be supporting someone else. Like, that's fine. But I will say I don't really love, like, there was a post going around of a bunch of people going like, oh, they're so, like, I love this, they're so sweet, of like a straight couple kissing at Pride. And like they like captioned it themselves and were like, we're straight but we went to Pride. And my issue with that is that you have, like, everywhere else in the world to be a straight couple together. Whereas Pride is sometimes the only safe space for people to, like, act like a couple together. Like, at Pride, you'll see, like, couples kissing in the street and stuff like that. And you don't see that, like, walking around town. Because people will be like, that's gay. Well, you can't do that.
This is my space.
This is my area.
I mean, that's kind of the core of the issue, is that in a lot of spheres of life, LGBT people are forced to live differently or not live as they would like to.
Or quietly.
Yeah, exactly. You try, I mean, if you're trans, you might not present as the way you really identify because you have fear of violence towards you. If you're in a couple that is obviously gay, you will not kiss on the streets, you will not hold hands. And so when it comes to, so I can understand where the gatekeeping comes from. At the end of the day, I understand, like, where it originates from. I just think as a community we do need to
know when enough is enough.
Know when enough is enough, and also address the fact that at some point we do cross a line into becoming exclusive when that is not what the LGBT community wants to be, and that's not what we aim to be.
Because I feel like gatekeeping, if it gets too bad, because I feel like a lot of us start off as allies. We see the LGBT community, we identify with something in it, we're not sure what we identify with, so we're like, I think I'm still straight, you know, I'm still normal, but do love them gays. And then one day you just wake up and you're like in a cold sweat and you're like, oh fuck, I think I am one of them. They got to me.
Well, I mean, and that's also part of it. I think there's this big misconception that when people do identify as LGBT and not necessarily, like, again, people, there's all kinds of, like, gatekeeping going on where, like, people don't consider bi people to be, like, true LGBT stuff going on. It can come from a place of confusion. People don't exactly know how I mean, sexuality is a spectrum, and I mean, at least in my experience, I did not know. It wasn't a revelation one day where I was like, I was straight up until now, but today I woke up and I realized I am bi. Like, it happened over time, and it happened in a way that wasn't very clear because we don't have a lot of education on being gay and what that is.
I will say, like, when I realized that I was bi, it was kind of like a slow thing. I will say it was a little strange because other people realized before me. It was my first year in public high school, and people were like, man, you seem pretty bi, like pretty gay actually. And I was just like, what? No, I like men. And they're like, don't you think that girl's hot? And I was like, yes. And they're like, dang it, I am. But I think that honestly for a lot of bi people, their like realization is a little weird because you can pretend to be straight. It's very easy to be like, well, yeah, I'm attracted to girls, but I can just ignore it because I'm also attracted to guys, you know? And I think that, like, you know, I might think that she's cute and I might, like, want to have a relationship with her, but, like, I do have other options. Like, gay people, like, if they want to have love in their life that is romantic, that's their only option.
Absolutely.
You know? And I understand where the, like, gatekeeping from that comes from, is because gay people feel like, you know, we have no option but to be visibly different, whereas bi people can, like, I mean, like, they can hide it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that fun, because if you like someone who's your same gender, you're just like, man, I wish, but sorry, I'm not gay enough to go after this.
I know, absolutely. I mean, I had personal experience with that at the peak of discovering that, hey, maybe I'm not straight. I was in a public school in Florida, and I showed minimal interest in a girl and was immediately called, like, faggot, you know, the whole line of that, which was hilarious, honestly. Like, in hindsight, very uncreative. Like, you could have come up with something better, I feel, but whatever.
Just a slur. Lazy.
Right, like, I feel like you could have...
You could at least beat my ass.
Honestly. Something more interesting. But I mean, definitely, I could live. I could navigate. I could operate in a way that gay people could not. And I definitely had a privilege in that.
What you've said before, where homophobes see us in the same light. So we're getting rejected by that. But then you can also be rejected by people who are like, you're not really gay, though, so you don't belong in this community. So it is a weird gray area of being, like, semi-accepted in two places, but not really feeling quite at home.
Yeah. And I mean, if you... There's also, like, this whole thing where a lot of parents believe that, like, being bisexual isn't a thing. Like, you can't be attracted to both male and female. And if you've ever watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine... fan. But, like, Detective Rosa Diaz comes out as bisexual in the show to her parents, and they don't accept it, and it's something that takes, like, a huge toll on her because she loves her parents and she's very close with them, and they don't accept her for who she is because they don't believe that who she is real.
I will say, like, that's a thing that I identify personally with, because I am not actually, like, out at home. And, like, the weird thing is, like, I know that, like, my parents would still, like, love, accept, and, like, definitely not kick me out. Like, we're not that kind of family. But, like, I know that they don't, like, they, like, know that, like, being gay is a thing. And they know that, obviously, being straight is a thing. And they can, like, accept both. But, like, bisexual in the middle, they think that that's just kind of, like, a greed. You know, like... Not like a greed thing saying, like, I want all the people, but just kind of like a lust thing, I think.
Yeah.
And, like, that's something that's always been strange to me, and that's why I think that representation in the media is so important. Because a lot of people who are bisexual in the media are shown as very promiscuous. And I'm like, and that's fine. If you're bisexual and promiscuous, like that, do what you want. But when that's shown as, like, the only option, people just get this thing in their heads that, like, the only reason why people are bi is because it gives them more options of people to fuck.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that is also what we've been talking about. Something important to address within the community is that while we all are, hopefully, inclusive and we all respect each other and we're in this community together, we all go through different experiences, and that should not be grounds to alienate someone or to put up walls in the community. It should just be a conversation. And I mean, there is a difference. I've heard it online all the time. People talk about the oppression Olympics, and I think there's a middle ground between not addressing that one person has suffered more than the other, and then also that being the entire focus of what the community is about. There is, I think, a healthy middle in addressing the different levels of privilege that are inherently a part of who you are. Like, I am white passing Hispanic. If someone, another bisexual girl who was more typically looking Hispanic, absolutely she probably has had a harder time with it than I have, just based on that alone. Inherent privilege.
Like, I think we can all admit, like, trans people of color are probably the most oppressed. Like, isn't the life expectancy, like, 35 in the United States because they keep getting murdered, and people are like, I don't think that's happening, and then it's like, then why are they all dying? And I was like, shh, don't talk about it.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing, then there are people who take that and are like, well, you shouldn't even talk about what you've gone through, because obviously trans people of color have it the worst. And, I mean, yes, I think we can all agree. They have. Yes.
But someone else's worse pain does not mean that your pain isn't valid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And when we move towards a community where we don't feel like we can talk about our own individual experiences, I think we are actively hurting the community. And also our own health within the community.
Because I think it's also almost lowering our, like, standards of, like, expectation. Because, like, eventually, if we keep saying, you can't talk about your own, like, discriminatory personal experience because someone suffered worse, then it's gonna lead to a point where we're being like, well, people are throwing rocks at me in the street, but I know that other people are getting murdered, so I guess I have to take the rocks, you know?
Right.
Like,
rocks or murder.
It's a, Guess
Neither.
you could say
How about neither?
Guess you could say I'm between a rock and a hard place.
You're dropped from the podcast. I'm doing the intros from
I
now
think
on.
it was worth it. So I don't want to talk about bisexuality the whole time, but I would like to touch on another thing that is specific, I think, to bisexuality, and I would like to give everyone the quick definition, or at least what I agree should be the definition of bisexuality, because a lot of people say that bisexuality is transphobic, because there's the whole bi versus pan debate. And what I have heard as a definition, and this is how I define my bisexuality, is that the bi comes from your same gender and other, as in 1 is same gender, 2 is others. So it's not I'm attracted to the binaries, I'm only attracted to male and only attracted to female. It's that. And the way it's different from pansexuality, which is all genders as well, is that pansexuality is you feel the same towards you have the same kind of attraction feeling towards regardless of gender. I think as pansexuality more almost gender blind, if that makes sense. Whereas bisexuality, I definitely feel a different type of attraction towards different genders. But I'm attracted nonetheless.
Yeah. I think pansexuality grew out of a real need. I'll be honest. I think, while in my experience, and most of the bisexual people I interact with and associate myself with, have no problem with pursuing a relationship with someone who is non-binary or someone who is trans or on that spectrum of gender, there are people who would not. And I think pansexuality grew out of bisexual people who they themselves defined it as men and women. And I think it's unfortunate, but I also think that it's doing the community a disservice to act like the people don't exist.
And I know that polysexuality is attraction towards some and not all. And I think that should be used maybe more often for the binaries, you know, because I think that I don't think it's phobic or transphobic to say I'm only attracted towards these extreme ends. I think it's a little transphobic if you're I'm not even attracted to trans men, because at that point I'm I don't. If they identify as a full on man, then that's
then you
that's
clearly
the
don't
binary.
See them. Yeah, you clearly don't see them as a man.
I think by saying that bisexuality is transphobic is being transphobic in itself, because then you're not recognizing trans people as actual genders.
You're seeing them as a weird middle ground. It's
they're just woman and man. Just, you can't be that's transphobic by saying you're attracted to both men and women, because then there are trans people. Okay, yeah, but
trans people fall into that category. Sure. Yeah, and I will recognize the non-binary thing is kind of a gray area, if you will. But
so obviously Rose isn't.
You can't see me, but guys. I'm holding my face in shame at that statement you just made.
This might be our last podcast. And I understand where people are saying well, if you're only attracted to the binaries, that might be weird that you're saying that you're not attracted to non-binary people specifically because they're non-binary. But I think that it is I don't know. I, as someone who is my definition of bisexual, where gender has never been a thing for me, I feel I might not be the person to be able to really attest to this, but I guess there are some people out there that gender does matter towards their attraction.
Yeah.
To me, it feels like a different attraction, but it's there.
The attraction is there nonetheless.
Yeah.
The attraction may be stronger or weaker depending on who it is, but for me personally, it's more of who they are as a person rather than are they male or female.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there is some misconceptions with pansexuals where, I've seen it all over Tumblr specifically, where people hate on pansexuality because they interpret pansexuality to mean that they don't care about gender. And that, I think, is also incorrect.
No, because, I defined pansexuality as more gender blind, but I think that's kind of, a rough way to put it, where it's not, ignoring their gender. It's not saying...
It's just not a factor. It's not, a discriminatory factor. It's not oh, well, they identify as this, that too, then... And that's something kind of going back to gatekeeping, where sort of... not appropriating, I'm not going to say, but defining what someone else's attraction is I think very problematic, and also a thing that's very rampant in our community. People saying, oh, well, you feel this way. And the truth is, the person saying that does not, like, the whole idea we were talking about it earlier with the whole lesbians and bisexuals and how that is
I'll
treated.
give a quick backstory.
Oh.
So there was this I saw a tweet the other day saying that bisexuals should not use the terms butch and femme. Instead, they should use the words, I think it was like doe and like stud or something. I don't know. Fucking like terrible words. I would never call someone a doe if they were feminine.
I am not a deer.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you called me a deer, I'd have a lot of emotions about that.
None
then
of them
I
would
would
be
just
good.
think that you were like
Into that.
into
And
that.
I don't want that.
Not down for that. Also, I
But-
believe there's a difference between butch and stud.
Yeah, but then also, but they were saying, like, because bisexuals, like, here's the, like, your own slang, and I think that they were trying to be, like, I don't think it was, like, inherently biphobic, like, they were trying to be biphobic, but if you try and, like, separate lesbians and, like, bi women, you're acting as if bi women have not helped create those, like, terminology and things like that.
And that we don't have something fundamentally in common.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I love the term that is growing in popularity. It's WLW, Women Loving Women. Because it's, at the end of the day, it's so true. Like, I've said it before, we're all the same, pretty much, in the eyes of, like, angry homophobes. And I mean, that being said, obviously, we do suffer differently. When it comes to gatekeeping within the community, that's when I think we definitely are taking it a step too far. Like, with saying, oh, well, you can only use this slur. I've been called a faggot. I'm bi. They still called me faggot.
I never would.
hate
Actually, can you come up with a different slur for me? Because I just don't identify with that one, and it's not really working.
It's not. We're all the same in the eye of ignorance. I think fundamentally, like in the same sense that I've been called, and I'm so sorry for all the slurs that I'm dropping right now. I've also been called a spick. I'm not. That's not. I'm from Venezuela. That term does not fit me. That's actually an incorrect slur for me. But I mean, again, all the same in the eye of ignorance. And I think that is something that our community needs to focus more on rather than nitpicking in a sense. Because again, middle ground.
When we like tear each other down, we're forgetting the real enemy.
Yeah.
Straight people.
I mean, that's the thing. We do have a common oppressor. And I feel like that is actually something we could do a whole separate talk about is
how much we hate straight people. The whole
stop.
podcast.
How much
sorry, I'm losing our audience for us right now. I always forget you're the majority.
I mean, I feel like we do have a common oppressor. And I mean, I think it even honestly, not directly, but in the long term, like in the worldview thing, also applies to straight people. People who want to oppress people based on human rights and identity. I mean, not all straight people are exempt from that. There are straight people of color, and hey, they want to do it to you too.
Yeah.
Like, same oppressor.
I will say, there is, like, we should critique wrongs in our community, but we should have less, like, I don't know, aggressive, like, saying you can't do this. But I will say, one, like, big wrong that I would like us to touch on in the community is the whole only supporting attractive trans people. Oh, because I see it all the time on Twitter where someone who is like trans and like a supermodel and super fits into the binary that they identify as, or like sometimes, or like non-binary people who just have like the great jawline and people are like, I love trans people, I support their rights so much, like look at them, they're so beautiful. But as soon as they see a trans person who like A, is not
visibly
passing,
trans,
visibly trans, B is just, I mean, like, I feel like it's okay to say someone's just not attractive, but, like, just a trans person who's not, like, drop-dead gorgeous. Or, like a disabled
or who doesn't
trans
fit,
person.
like, typically Eurocentric beauty standards.
Exactly.
Literally, like, basically any trans person who is not a supermodel, they're always kind of like, I love trans people, except, a few of them. A few of them I don't like.
It's the vocal support they show for the people who are conventionally attractive. And those who do pass really well and those who do really fit the binary, I think it's incredibly shallow. Like, if you're going to, retweeting and like social media is, I think, kind of superficial, but it can also be such a great tool for making you feel valid in your identity. When we have those hashtags on Twitter that it's like promoting or just like
June is for queers and stuff.
Like, and those hashtags where people feel very free and happy to present themselves as what they identify with and just
like
put that in
LGBT or anything.
and just put that in the world, and then people show their support. I think is a great experience. It can be amazing. It can also be incredibly hurtful when you see someone who is more conventionally attractive getting much more support than you do, just because you may not be as passing or as conventionally attractive.
And I think that it's incredibly transphobic because honestly, the people that I see getting the least amount of support are people who are either they don't really want to pass in the way that they don't want to fit an exact binary. And I'm like, it's so frustrating to see people kind of like ignore them, but then also talk about breaking gender barriers and stuff like that. I'm like, a trans man should be able to wear makeup without people questioning his gender.
Yeah, just
and
don't
stuff.
do what he
Like,
wants, God.
if you talk such a big game about like breaking gender roles, but want trans people to very strictly follow them, or else you just won't respect who they are as a person at all. I think that that's really, like, that's just fucked up.
Yeah, and then also the thing where they're like, trans people can't be gay because
then
what was the point of even
out.
being like, that's PEMDAS.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, that's the thing. That middle ground of, it's not the oppression Olympics, but it's also not addressing something. We need to learn about each other's different experiences, because the truth is none of us are perfect. Like, none of us are like, oh, I'm the perfect gay. I'm so educated on everyone's experiences simultaneously and my own. Like, and I mean, that's human. It is especially hard in the LGBT community and those marginalized groups to know the experiences of other people, because there's so much actively working against them. There's not a lot of media coverage. There's not a lot of education about it in schools. So we need to make our community, in summary, the gatekeeping needs to end, I think, especially within the group, because the only way we can move forward is if we know the experiences of people within the group that aren't what we identify as.
Like the whole concept that you said before, where we would have to be in both my shoes and your shoes to be able to fully make an accurate like statement saying like you can belong in here, and that's just
you can or you can't. It's like, I'm sorry, have you lived my life and yours simultaneously?
At the same, wow, can you take over? Take the wheel.
Right.
Take the reins.
Go.
It's not a good time.
Right, you're bisexual but also gay?
And that's the and if you're wondering whether or not we were going to touch on the whole is pedophilia sexuality,
No.
we're not going to touch on that because it's not. And
It's not a thing.
debating it gives it validity, and it's not. So
It's
that's
not a
that.
thing. I'm not going to give the Reddit trolls what they so deeply desire.
Okay, and the last thing that we're going to talk about today is the over-sexualization of LGBT people in the media, because I'm sure we've all seen those, like, Twitter famous people who are in the LGBT community, like, I never know how to pronounce her name. It's like Eliza, I don't know, she makes shirts. She has, like, a clothing line that's, like, very, like artsy and stuff like that. I'm just remembering, like, one post of, like, her being like, you know, I'm not just gay. There are other things about me. Like, this is, like, something I do that's, like, clothing, you know? And I think that's an important thing in our community where it's, like, very easy for us because we identify so strongly with, like, our, like, sexuality and stuff like that, just because, like, it's a big part of, like, what makes us different from other people. It's hard, I think, within our community sometimes to not just define people by that.
Yeah. And I feel that, I mean, obviously in the media, I can think of very few cases where a character was written to be gay or bisexual or LGBT in general, and that wasn't their one defining characteristic. Like, they had very few cases where they had personality beyond that. And I think it stems from this attitude, because I know there are people who feel like they aren't gay enough because they don't, that's not like they're leading, they're not, hi, my name is this and I'm gay. Like, that is not a part of their introduction, or that's not how they present themselves, like, aesthetically and what they wear. And they, as a result, feel less gay, maybe less valid because of that. And I think that stems from the fact that historically we have not had, the LGBT community has not had, and still does not have, let's be honest, still does not, completely accepted, still does not really have a position in the world where they can be completely upfront with who they are. So when you do feel like you have a little bit of room, I can understand and I can really empathize with the feeling that you need to make sure that you are taking advantage of it. Because I know in so many cases, like, that's, my sexuality is not what defines me at all. Is it a big part of me? Absolutely. But I don't introduce myself with that. That's not like...
Absolutely.
I mean, to some girls, I'll be like, hey,
Hey,
bisexual.
Oh, me, absolutely.
But that's
me
more
handing
of,
out
like,
samples at my job. Hi, I'm gay. How are you?
Right.
But, like, yeah, there are different aspects of you. And I understand where you're coming from, where, like, gay people don't really have the space in the world sometimes to be, if anything, other than just gay.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to come out and say, like, I am gay, suddenly it kind of feels like all media, like, closes in around you. And, like, if you want to be anything else, it's going to be very, very hard to put that out there and be like, because, like, some people kind of see it as homophobic within the community, like internalized homophobia, being like, I'm not just gay, because then people are like, well, what's wrong with being just gay?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. As we were saying earlier, there's so much that goes into you living your daily life when you are LGBT. There's so many things that you have to alter to fit safety, essentially, to fit what society wants from you. And we've kind of done ourselves dirty in that sense, where we have kind of established that needs to be what we lead with when we can. And it does put an immense pressure on you as someone who's LGBT to feel like you constantly have to represent your community at all times.
And I think that that's a big thing for any minority, is that you know that, especially if you're in a place where not everyone's accepting of you, if you do something wrong, they're going to blame your entire community. Like, if I meet a homophobic person and I react in a human way to them being homophobic, like if they're like, hey, screw you for being gay, and I'm like, hey, screw you for not being gay, then they'll be like, gay people are so mean. One of them told me to screw myself for not being gay.
That whole thing where they're like, actually, I've been discriminated against by gay people. It's like, okay, I think there's a difference between literally gay people being murdered to this day and me being like, oh, those socks just don't go with that outfit, like, wig, like, snatch.
The straight people on Twitter will be like, hey, let's discuss. Is it okay to kill gay people? And then gay people will be like, no.
And the straights are like, I think we should all have our opinions.
That's my opinion.
And the straights are like, I didn't feel heard. I felt unsafe. And then, like, and I think people confuse discrimination and someone being rude or mean, because they're different. Because if I am mean to a straight person and I say, fuck you, straighty, so they're not gonna get fired from their job. No one on the street's gonna, like, throw their shit down and be like, you're straight, and then, like, punch them, just clock them right there. Where if on the street someone goes, fuck you, fag, someone else might go to me and say, like, someone even more violent. Like, more people will target me based off of that.
And I mean, let's be honest, no one says, fuck you, straighties. No one actually does that. It's like the whole SJW thing. Like, no one actually does that in real life. You need to go outside. No one does that.
Like, on Twitter,
it's like a fun meme.
I fully.
But that's the straights are being like, honestly, in my opinion, if I had a gay son, I'd kick him out. And someone's like, fuck you, straighty. Like,
but I feel like that's valid, because fuck you, straighty. And because, like, you see this shit all the time of people saying, like, it's just a debate, it's just a discussion. And it's like,
for some people it's not. Some people
but
it's their life.
Someone seeing this who's in the middle ground, like, I've seen, and I really like this, when you're fighting with someone who is so far, like, out in, like, the left field from your argument, you're not fighting to convince them, because you're never going to. You're fighting to convince the middle person who's watching that argument and trying to decide. And that's why it's so horrible for people to play the devil's advocate all the time with homophobia and be like, it's okay to not want your kids to be gay. Because then someone who might have a gay kid who is like, I'm not sure if I can accept them, and going back and forth about it, will see that and be like, okay, so it is valid for me to not accept them or to, like, abuse them.
If you don't want them to be who they are. Like, if you're not gonna love your kids unconditionally, don't have any.
Like,
that's just tea.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. Human rights is not a discussion. That's not a debate.
Like,
it's just not.
I don't know. I just think that playing devil's advocate is putting people who are already at risk in an even more dangerous situation for no reason.
Well, I mean, it's that whole idea of, like, we need to entertain and we need to give people a platform. Not everyone deserves a platform, including why we're not talking about the whole pedophilia is an LGBT thing. No, we're not. You don't deserve a platform.
Bestiality. Don't deserve a platform.
Like, there are plenty of things where it's like, sure, it might be an interesting discussion, but, like, you can talk about this just among your friends.
Yes, not publicly.
Yeah, publicly, no. Because if someone, again, who sees that and is debating whether or not it's the right thing to do, sees that and sees like, oh, well, they might disagree with it, but they put up points as to why. So it's not inherently wrong, it's just an opinion. And that's the thing, is even if you come out with a piece saying it's not this and you hear the reasons why, they're going to see that it's arguable.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we need to say that it's not. This is black and white. It is wrong.
Yeah, no. Punch Nazis.
Yeah. And that's our conclusion. So if you like this episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you disagreed with anything, or if you'd just like to add a comment, leave it in the comments under this video and we can address it in a future episode. We will be posting another podcast in about 2 weeks. So thank you for listening and have a swell day.